Hey guys, tonight we're going to dim the lights, settle into your coziest spot, and let's drift back. Way back. To a world where swiping right meant having a truly impressive dowry and a family name that could open doors. Imagine yourself as a young woman in ancient Rome, maybe around the age of 14, standing on the cusp of adulthood. The air around you probably smells of sun-warmed dust, strong olive oil, and the faint, ever-present scent of the city's bustling markets. You might hear the distant rumble of carts on cobblestones, the murmuring of your household, or perhaps the sharp, insistent chirping of cicadas in the warm afternoon. Your days aren't filled with social media scrolls or endless outfit choices. Instead, your life, your future, even your very identity, is inextricably linked to one monumental event: marriage. This isn't just about finding a soulmate, it's about cementing alliances, securing property, and ensuring the continuation of your family line. Sounds a little less romantic than a modern rom-com, doesn't it? You're essentially a valuable asset, a strategic pawn in a much larger game of power and prestige. And honestly, you probably wouldn't survive a single day in their sandals. The pressures, the expectations, the sheer lack of personal agency, it's a stark contrast to our world. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. As you awaken to the Roman sun filtering through a small window, probably no larger than a modern laptop screen, you understand that your existence, almost from the moment you drew your first breath, has been meticulously shaped by the anticipation of marriage. You are a Roman girl, and your future is not about individual desires or personal ambitions, but about fulfilling a societal role, a sacred duty: your education, rudimentary by today's standards, focuses on skills deemed appropriate for a matron managing a household, overseeing slaves, spinning wool, and perhaps a little basic literacy if your family is particularly enlightened or wealthy. Forget dreams of being a poet, a philosopher, or even an independent businesswoman. Those paths are, for the most part, simply not open to you. Your value isn't measured by your wit or charm, though those certainly help, but by your potential to bear legitimate children, especially sons, who will carry on your family's esteemed name. You learn early on that your reputation is everything. A whisper of impropriety, a hint of scandal, can tarnish not only your standing but also that of your entire family. Imagine living under that constant scrutiny, every action, every conversation, every glance weighed and judged. There are no private lives in the way we understand them today. Your family's honor is a delicate tapestry, and you, as a young woman, are a crucial thread. This pressure is immense, a heavy cloak you wear from childhood. Your parents, particularly your father or the male head of your household, hold absolute authority over your life. They are the architects of your future, and their decisions, especially regarding your marriage, are final. You might harbor secret hopes or preferences, but voicing them too loudly would be considered unseemly, perhaps even rebellious. Compliance is a virtue, silence a shield. You grow up watching older women in your family, your mother, your aunts, your elder sisters, navigate the intricate dance of Roman society. You see their deference to their husbands, their quiet strength in managing vast households, their subtle influence behind closed doors. You also observe the strict social hierarchy that dictates every interaction. Your status is not just personal, it's a reflection of your family's standing. Are they plebeian or patrician? Do they have a long and honorable lineage? Or are they newly rich? Striving for acceptance. All of this plays a critical role in your marriage prospects. A good match can elevate your family's position. Securing political alliances or economic advantages? A poor match, however, could spell ruin. This isn't just about love, it's about power, prestige, and survival as you approach the age of marriage, typically around 12 to 14 for girls, though sometimes as young as 10. The conversations around you subtly shift. The focus intensifies on finding a suitable husband. Your family will meticulously vet potential candidates, considering their wealth, their social connections, their political aspirations, and the health of their family line. Personal compatibility, while not entirely disregarded, often takes a backseat to more pragmatic considerations. You might be introduced to a potential husband at a family gathering or a public event, observing him from a polite distance. There's no expectation of dating in the modern sense. No getting to know you dinners or casual outings. Your interactions would be chaperoned, formal, and designed to assess suitability, not spark romance. It's less about butterflies in your stomach and more about the strategic alignment of two powerful families. Think about the sheer lack of personal choice. Your body, your future, your very identity are often viewed as tools for your family's advancement. While Roman law did afford women more rights than some other ancient societies, particularly later in the Republic and during the Empire, the early stages of a woman's life were undeniably constrained. You might yearn for affection, for a connection beyond the transactional nature of an arranged marriage. But such desires are secondary to duty. You are taught to be modest, demure, and obedient. Public displays of emotion are frowned upon, especially for women. Your value lies in your ability to maintain composure, embody virtue, and contribute to the family's reputation. The preparations for your eventual marriage begin long before any formal betrothal. Your family invests in your appearance, ensuring you have suitable clothing, modest jewelry, and a generally well-kept demeanor. While the Greeks valued the natural beauty of women and had a more relaxed approach to public appearance, Roman women, particularly those of the upper classes, were expected to present themselves impeccably, often with elaborate hairstyles and subtly applied cosmetics. You might use natural pigments to enhance your complexion or darken your eyebrows, and perhaps even a touch of kohl for your eyes. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen we mentioned? It wasn't just a funny anecdote. Ancient Roman women genuinely used various, sometimes questionable, remedies and concoctions to maintain their youthful appearance. Believing pale skin to be a sign of nobility, such beauty standards were not for self-expression, but for meeting societal expectations and enhancing your attractiveness as a potential bride. The pressure to conform to these ideals was relentless. Your daily routine involves overseeing household duties, perhaps learning to read and write if your family is progressive enough, and engaging in traditional feminine crafts like spinning and weaving. These are not merely hobbies, they are essential skills for managing a prosperous household. The ability to produce fine textiles was a mark of a diligent and virtuous Roman matron. You would spend hours with your female relatives, learning the intricacies of household management, from supervising slaves to preparing meals and overseeing finances. This practical education is considered far more valuable than abstract academic pursuits. Your worth is intrinsically tied to your ability to run an efficient and respectable home, a place where your husband can retreat from the public sphere and find comfort. Historians still debate whether there was true romantic love in Roman arranged marriages, or if it was merely a concept that developed over time within the confines of a practical union. While initial affections might have been secondary to political or economic considerations, many Roman couples, through shared experiences and the raising of families, undoubtedly developed deep affection and respect for one another. But that initial spark, that choice based purely on emotional connection, was largely absent from your early romantic experiences. Your family's honor, your societal standing, and the continuation of your lineage trumped any nascent feelings of infatuation. This understanding of marriage as a contract, a social necessity rather than a romantic ideal, is fundamental to grasping your place in Roman society. You are a valuable link in a chain, and your role is to ensure that chain remains unbroken. As you inch closer to the age of betrothal, The concept of dating, as you might understand it today, simply doesn't exist. There are no casual coffee dates, no leisurely strolls in the park just to get to know someone. Instead, your interactions with potential suitors, or more accurately, their families, are highly structured and revolve around public appearances and formal gatherings. You might attend a family banquet, a religious festival, or a public spectacle, always under the watchful eye of chaperones. Your behavior in these settings is paramount. You are expected to be demure, modest, and reserved, speaking only when spoken to, and even then, with brevity and grace. Laughter should be gentle, not boisterous. Your gaze should be downcast or directed politely, never lingering too long on any man who isn't a close family member. This isn't about flirting. It's about showcasing your virtue and your suitability as a future Roman matron. Imagine the subtle signals, the unspoken language of Roman society. A potential suitor's family might observe how you interact with your younger siblings, how respectfully you address your elders, or how deftly you manage a simple task within the household. They're looking for signs of good breeding, of a temperament that will ensure a stable and harmonious home. Your beauty, while appreciated, is secondary to your reputation for modesty and diligence. A Roman woman's allure was often tied to her perceived purity and her ability to manage a household efficiently. This isn't to say that physical attractiveness was entirely ignored. A pleasant appearance certainly didn't hurt, but it was never the primary factor in securing a match. Think of it less as a personal attraction and more as a detailed resume review, where your character and family background are the most crucial bullet points. The process of finding a match often begins with negotiations between the paterfamilias, the male head of the family of both sides. This is a business transaction, pure and simple, albeit one involving human lives. Your father, or your legal guardian, would discuss the terms of the dowry, the property, or money you bring to the marriage with the prospective groom's family. This dowry isn't just a gift, it's a critical component of the marriage contract, intended to support you during the marriage and provide you with a measure of financial security. It also represents your family's investment in the union and their commitment to its success. The size and nature of the dowry could significantly influence your attractiveness as a bride, especially if your family was not of the highest social standing, but possessed considerable wealth. You might overhear hushed conversations between your parents, fragments of discussions about land, slaves, or political alliances. These aren't whispers of romantic interest, but rather the cold, hard facts of your future. You might feel a pang of apprehension, perhaps even a flicker of curiosity about the man whose name is being mentioned with increasing frequency. What does he look like? Is he kind? Will he be a good husband? These questions might swirl in your mind, but you know better than to voice them. Your role is to accept the decision made for you, to trust that your family has your best interests, and more importantly, their own, at heart. This acceptance is drilled into you from a young age. It's an intrinsic part of being a Roman woman. One of the more unique aspects of Roman courtship, or lack thereof, was the practice of child betrothal. While you might not be married until your early teens, it was not uncommon for engagements to be arranged years in advance, sometimes when the future bride and groom were still infants. Imagine growing up knowing, definitively, who your future spouse would be. This certainly eliminated the uncertainty of dating, but it also removed any semblance of choice. You might play with your future husband as children, perhaps even develop a sibling-like bond, but there's no opportunity for a blossoming romance. This early arrangement was a way to solidify family ties and ensure strategic alliances well into the future. A long-term investment in social and political capital, your premarital life is dominated by preparing for your new role as a wife. This isn't just about learning household skills, but also about understanding the social etiquette of a Roman matron. You learn about showing proper deference to your husband, managing your slaves, and overseeing the entire domestic sphere. You are trained to be a mater familias, the mistress of the house, a position that held considerable power and responsibility within the private domain, while you couldn't vote or hold public office. Your influence within your home and through your husband could be significant. You might learn about the importance of being a good hostess, ensuring your husband's guests are well received, and maintaining a household that reflects positively on his standing. The social gatherings you attend before your marriage are essentially showcases. Your family presents you to society, subtly advertising your virtues. You might observe other young women, similarly dressed, similarly demure, each hoping to catch the eye of a prominent family. It's a silent competition, played out through decorum and reputation rather than overt displays. You're taught to navigate crowded forums, bustling markets, and lively banquets with an air of quiet dignity, a slight smile, a polite nod, a graceful movement. These are your tools for making a favorable impression. This elaborate dance of social graces is far removed from the casual spontaneity of modern dating. Another interesting detail is the emphasis on propitious omens. Before any major life event, including a betrothal or marriage, Romans would consult augurs or take great care to observe signs from the gods. A flock of birds flying in a certain direction, the entrails of a sacrificed animal, or even a sudden clap of thunder could be interpreted as favorable or unfavorable omens. While this might seem superstitious to us, for the Romans, it was a deeply ingrained part of their religious and cultural fabric. Your family might delay negotiations or even cancel a proposed match if the omens were deemed ill. It adds another layer of complexity and uncertainty to an already predetermined process. There's a subtle, almost humorous irony in the Roman approach to love and marriage. While the formal arrangements were so practical, Roman literature, poetry, and even wall paintings are filled with passionate, often illicit, love stories. Ovid, the famous Roman poet, even wrote a guide called Ars Amatoria, The Art of Love, which, despite its title, was more about seduction and extramarital affairs than finding a lifelong partner. This highlights a fascinating tension, the highly structured, duty-bound reality of Roman marriage on one hand, and the powerful, often disruptive, force of individual desire on the other. It's a reminder that human emotions, then as now, rarely fit neatly into societal boxes. Historians still debate whether Roman women had any real agency in their marriage choices, or if they were entirely passive participants. While the ideal was certainly obedience to the paterfamilias, there are scattered accounts and legal loopholes that suggest some women, particularly later in the empire, found ways to exert a degree of influence, perhaps through subtle persuasion or by leveraging their family's wealth. But for the vast majority of women, especially in the earlier periods, your path was laid out for you, and your consent was assumed rather than explicitly sought. You were a piece on a grand chessboard, and your move was decided long before you even knew the rules of the game. The formal engagement, or sponsalia, in ancient Rome was less about a romantic proposal and more about a public declaration of intent. You wouldn't find a suitor on bended knee presenting a diamond ring instead. It was a solemn ceremony, typically held at the bride's home, where your father, or the paterfamilias, and the groom's father would exchange promises in front of witnesses. This wasn't just a verbal agreement, it was a legally binding contract, a promise to marry that could only be broken under specific circumstances, and often with significant financial penalties. Imagine the weight of that moment, your future being sealed with a handshake and a few formal words. Without your direct input, but with your entire family's honor on the line, during this ceremony, you, as the prospective bride, might receive an iron ring from your future husband, often worn on the fourth finger of your left hand, a tradition that vaguely echoes our modern engagement rings. This ring wasn't necessarily a symbol of eternal love, but rather a token of the pledge, a visible sign to the world that you were promised. It signified that you were no longer entirely available, your status now shifting from an eligible maiden to a woman formally committed to marriage. This ring might not have been ornate, often. It was a simple band, representing the strength and permanence of the contract. The period between the sponsalia and the actual wedding could vary significantly, from a few days to several years, especially if the betrothal occurred when you were very young. During this time, your life would be even more focused on preparing for your new role. Your family would ensure you received the proper instruction in household management, perhaps even supervising slaves and overseeing basic accounts. This was your practical apprenticeship, ensuring you would be a competent and respected mater familias. You'd be taught the intricate rituals of Roman domestic life, from overseeing the daily bread making to understanding the proper way to entertain guests and maintain social graces. A crucial aspect of this premarital phase was the dowry dues. This was not merely a gift from your family to you, it was a substantial transfer of wealth from your family to your husband, intended to help support you during the marriage and to provide for your joint household. The dowry could consist of land, money, slaves, or valuable goods. Its size was a direct reflection of your family's wealth and social standing for the groom's family. A large dowry was not just a financial boon, it was a testament to the bride's family's prestige and their commitment to the union. It also served as a safeguard for you, in many cases, if the marriage ended. The dowry was expected to be returned to your family, providing a degree of financial security for you in case of divorce or widowhood. This makes the dowry less like a bride price and more like a significant investment in the marriage's stability. Think of the sheer financial implications of this system. Marriages among the elite were less about romance and more about the strategic merging of vast family fortunes. Imagine your father spending months, perhaps even years, negotiating the precise details of your dowry, leveraging his assets, making careful calculations to ensure the best possible match for you and for the family. You, as the bride, are literally a walking asset, a valuable piece of property being transferred, albeit one with a will and personality, which, ideally, would conform to societal expectations. The exchange of gifts, while not as central as the dowry, was also a part of the engagement period. Your future husband's family might send gifts to you, such as jewelry, fine fabrics, or even perfumed oils. These weren't necessarily expressions of affection, but rather tokens of esteem and a display of their wealth and generosity. Similarly, your family might send gifts to the groom, signaling their approval and good wishes. These exchanges cemented the bond between the two families even before the wedding vows were exchanged. It was a visible demonstration to the wider community that a significant alliance was being forged. The social fabric of Rome was tightly woven with these marital alliances. A marriage between two prominent families could shift the political landscape, create powerful new factions, or solidify existing ones. You, as the bride, were not just marrying a man, you were marrying into an entire network of social and political connections. Your husband's family would become your own, and your loyalty would shift, at least in part, from your birth family to your new one. This transition was a fundamental aspect of becoming a Roman wife. You were expected to adopt your new family's customs, honor their ancestors, and contribute to their prosperity and reputation. One curious detail about Roman betrothal is the absence of a required minimum age for the sponsalia, while marriage typically occurred at or after the age of 12 for girls. Engagements could technically be entered into at any age, even in infancy. This highlights the purely contractual nature of the agreement. It wasn't about the individuals being ready for marriage emotionally or physically, but about the families securing a strategic alliance for the future. Imagine being told, at the tender age of 5, that you were already promised to someone. It removes any sense of romantic exploration or personal discovery in your formative years. Another fascinating aspect is the legal concept of manus marriage versus free marriage. In early Roman law, a manus marriage meant that you, as the wife, passed completely from your father's control into your husband's. He gained all legal rights over you, essentially becoming your new paterfamilias. This was a complete transfer of legal authority. However, over time, a more common form of marriage, the free marriage sine manu, became prevalent, especially among the elite. In a free marriage, you remained legally under your father's authority, even after marriage. This gave you a degree of independence that women in monist marriages didn't possess, particularly concerning your property rights and inheritance. While your husband might still exert significant social and moral influence, your legal ties to your birth family remained strong. This distinction is crucial because it significantly impacted your legal standing and autonomy within your marriage, reflecting a gradual shift in women's rights in Roman society. Historians still debate the extent to which emotions played a role in these arranged betrothals, while pragmatic considerations clearly dominated. It's difficult to imagine that no feelings of anticipation, anxiety, or even quiet affection ever arose. Perhaps, over time, a young woman might grow to admire or even love her betrothed, especially if he was kind and respectful. But the initial phase of courtship was a meticulously choreographed performance, designed to secure a powerful alliance. Not necessarily to ignite a passionate romance, you were a pawn on a chessboard, albeit a very valuable and essential one. In the grand game of Roman society, the wedding day in ancient Rome wasn't just a single event, it was a series of intricate rituals, steeped in tradition and symbolism, designed to transition you from your father's authority to your husband's, and to bless the union for fertility and prosperity. You wouldn't wake up to a flurry of bridesmaids or last-minute dress fitting. Instead, your day would begin with solemn preparations, overseen by your mother or trusted older female relative. The focus was on adherence to custom, not personal preference. On the eve of your wedding, you, as the bride, would perform a significant ritual dedicating your childhood toys to the household gods, the Lares and Penates. This act symbolized your farewell to girlhood and your embrace of adult responsibilities. Imagine carefully selecting your favorite doll, perhaps a small clay figure or a miniature loom, and placing it reverently on the household altar. It was a poignant moment, a tangible marker of the end of one life phase and the beginning of another. Leaving behind the carefree days of youth for the serious duties of a Roman matron, this wasn't a choice, it was a sacred obligation, a quiet acknowledgement of the profound shift about to occur in your life. Your wedding attire itself was highly symbolic. You would wear a tunica recta, a simple straight white tunic woven in one piece, girded with a knot called the knot of Hercules Nodus Herculeanus, which your husband would traditionally untie on your wedding night. This knot was a symbol of fertility and good fortune, invoked from the mythical hero known for his strength and numerous offspring. Over this, you would don a bright orange or saffron-colored veil, the flammium, which completely covered your face. A strikingly vibrant contrast to the solemnity of the occasion, your hair would be styled in 6 braids, held together by wool fillet, a traditional Roman hairstyle known as the sex crines. Believed to ward off evil, all these elements weren't about fashion, they were protective and auspicious, intended to ensure the success and blessedness of the marriage. The ceremony itself would typically take place at your father's house. It wasn't conducted in a temple by a priest, as is common in many modern weddings. Instead, a sponsalia had already occurred, which was the legal contract. The wedding itself was a social and religious affirmation. The most crucial part of the ceremony was often the confariatio, particularly for patrician families. This was a highly formal and ancient ritual, involving the offering of a special cake made of far and ancient grain, shared by the bride and groom. 10 witnesses, including the Pontifex Maximus chief priest and the Flamen Dialis high priest of Jupiter, had to be present. This specific ritual was considered the most sacred and legally binding form of marriage, making divorce incredibly difficult. Imagine participating in a ceremony so profound that it was believed to link you spiritually as well as legally. However, Not all marriages were confariatio. Many Romans, especially from the plebeian class or in later periods, opted for less formal ceremonies like coemptio, a symbolic purchase of the bride, or usus marriage by continuous cohabitation for a year. In the case of usus, if you lived with a man for an entire year, you were legally considered his wife. However, you could prevent this by spending 3 consecutive nights away from his house before the year was up. A curious loophole that allowed you to maintain your legal ties to your father's family and avoid passing fully into your husband's manus. This highlights the evolving legal landscape surrounding Roman marriage and the surprising ways women could, at times, exert a sliver of autonomy, sliver of following the formal declarations and any shared rituals. The most public and joyous part of the wedding day began the procession deductio from your father's house to your new husband's home. This wasn't a private affair, it was a lively, noisy public spectacle designed to announce your marriage to the entire community. Imagine stepping out into the Roman streets, still veiled, flanked by your family and friends. A crowd would gather, torches would be lit even in daylight to symbolize the light and warmth of the new home, and flute players would accompany the procession, their music weaving through the cheers and shouts of good wishes. Nuts, often walnuts, would be scattered, symbolizing fertility and prosperity, and children would scramble to collect them. This public display served to legitimize the marriage in the eyes of the community, signaling your transition from one household to another. As you arrived at your new home, your husband would symbolically lift you over the threshold. This wasn't out of chivalry, but a practical and superstitious act. It was considered bad luck for the bride to stumble upon entering her new home, stepping over the threshold gracefully. Carried by your husband, ensured a smooth and auspicious beginning to your married life. You would then touch the doorposts with oil and adorn them with wool, ancient rituals to bless the house and ward off evil. Your husband would offer you fire and water, symbols of life and purity, signifying your shared life and your acceptance into his household. This was your formal entry into your new domain, where you would assume your role as mater familias. Inside, a small banquet would be held, not a lavish party like modern receptions, but a more intimate gathering with close family and friends. This was where you, as the new bride, would utter your first words in your new home, ubi tu Gaius, ibi ego Gaia. Where you are Gaius, I am Gaia. This ancient formula, which likely predated the common use of individual names and referred more broadly to man and woman, symbolized your complete dedication and loyalty to your husband and his household. It was a powerful declaration of your commitment, a vow to follow him wherever he led, both literally and figuratively. The wedding night itself was also steeped in ritual rather than purely romantic notions. The knot of Hercules would be untied, symbolizing the consummation of the marriage and the hope for many children. The entire day, from beginning to end, was a performance. A carefully choreographed dance of tradition designed to ensure the success and legitimacy of the union in the eyes of gods and mortals alike. It was a public affirmation of a private contract, transforming you, the young woman, into a Roman wife, with all the duties and responsibilities that entailed. One fascinating, yet sometimes overlooked, detail is the role of the marriage witnesses. These weren't just random guests, their presence was crucial for the legal validity of the marriage. They essentially served as public record keepers, able to attest that the ceremony took place and that the necessary rituals were performed. This underscores the public and contractual nature of Roman marriage, where legitimacy was derived from communal acknowledgement rather than a private act of consent. Their testimony could be vital in later legal disputes regarding the marriage's validity or the legitimacy of children. Historians still debate the exact variations of wedding rituals across different social classes and time periods in ancient Rome. While the basic framework remained, wealthy families might have more elaborate processions and banquets, while poorer families might have very simple, almost informal, Ceremonies, however, the core elements of the public declaration, the symbolic transfer of the bride, and the hope for fertility were universal. Reflecting the fundamental purpose of marriage in Roman society, the continuation of the family and the perpetuation of the Roman state. You were not just marrying a man, you were marrying into a destiny, intertwined with the very fabric of Roman civilization. Your new life as a Roman wife, or mater familias, began immediately after the wedding procession crossed the threshold of your husband's home. This wasn't a period of honeymoon bliss as we might envision it. Instead, you were thrust into the rigorous responsibilities of managing a Roman household, which, depending on your husband's status, could range from a modest home to a sprawling estate with dozens, even hundreds, of slaves. Your primary role was no longer that of a sheltered maiden, but a diligent manager, responsible for the smooth operation of your new domain. The days of a Roman matron were often long and demanding. You were expected to oversee the production of textiles within the home, a task considered highly virtuous. Imagine spending hours supervising the spinning of wool and the weaving of cloth, ensuring that your household produced enough fabric for clothing, blankets, and even decorative tapestries. This wasn't merely a hobby, it was an economic activity that contributed to the family's wealth and self-sufficiency. Even empresses were praised for their ability to spin wool. Symbolizing domestic virtue, you might find yourself instructing slave women, ensuring the quality of their work, and perhaps even joining them in the task. Setting an example of industry beyond textiles. Your duties extended to managing the household's finances, while your husband handled the larger business and political affairs. You were responsible for the daily budgeting, ensuring there was enough food, managing the household stores, and allocating resources for various needs. This required a keen mind for numbers and a practical understanding of economics. You would direct the slave staff, overseeing the preparation of meals, the cleaning of the house, and the general maintenance of the property. This was no small feat. A Roman household, even a moderately wealthy one, was a complex machine, and you were its chief engineer. Your social role as a mater familias was also incredibly important. You were expected to host guests, particularly those of your husband's business or political associates. This meant ensuring that banquets were perfectly executed, from the quality of the food and wine to the comfort of the dining couches and the entertainment provided. Your ability to create a welcoming and impressive environment reflected directly on your husband's social standing and could significantly aid his career. Imagine the pressure of ensuring every detail was just right. Knowing that a single misstep could be seen as a slight to a powerful guest, you learned to navigate complex social cues, to engage in polite conversation, and to maintain an air of dignified hospitality. While your life was largely confined to the domestic sphere, it wasn't one of complete isolation. You would likely visit female friends and relatives, attend religious ceremonies, and perhaps even public spectacles like chariot races or gladiatorial games, albeit always accompanied and within the bounds of propriety. These outings were opportunities to maintain social connections, gather information, and subtly exert influence. You might share gossip about other families, discuss the latest fashions, or complain good-naturedly about the challenges of managing a large household. These were rare moments of relative freedom, offering a glimpse into the wider Roman world. One of the most profound duties, and arguably the most anticipated, was the production of heirs, particularly sons. Fertility was highly valued in Roman society, and your primary purpose as a wife was to bear legitimate children who would carry on your husband's family name and inherit his property. Imagine the immense pressure to conceive, especially in an era without modern medicine, where childbirth was incredibly dangerous for both mother and child if you struggled to conceive, or only bore daughters. There could be significant stress and even pressure for your husband to divorce you to find a more fertile wife. The birth of a son would be met with immense joy and celebration. securing your position within the household and ensuring the continuation of the family line. A lesser-known fact is that some Roman women, particularly those from wealthier families, developed considerable intellectual pursuits, while not formally educated in the same way as men. Many learned to read and write, studied Greek literature, or even participated in philosophical discussions. Think of women like Cornelia, the mother of the Gracchi brothers, renowned for her intellect and eloquence, who embodied the ideal of the educated Roman matron. While most women's lives were defined by domestic duties, there was a quiet undercurrent of intellectual curiosity among some, allowing them to transcend, at least partially, the purely domestic sphere. The concept of a loving marriage in ancient Rome is a complex one. While initial marriages were often arranged for practical reasons, many Roman couples, over time, developed deep bonds of affection and mutual respect. Inscriptions on gravestones often speak of wives as univira, a woman married to only one man, praising their loyalty and virtue. Letters and poems occasionally revealed genuine tenderness and companionship between spouses. It wasn't the passionate, all-consuming romance often depicted in modern media, but a more pragmatic, enduring affection that grew from shared experiences, responsibilities, and the raising of a family. You might find comfort and companionship in your husband, even if he wasn't the man of your youthful dreams. Historians still debate the true extent of power Roman women wielded within their marriages, while legally subordinate to their husbands and fathers. Many women, through their strong personalities, wealth, or social connections, exerted considerable influence behind the scenes. They advised their husbands, managed family finances, and even engaged in political maneuvering through their male relatives. It was often said that a good Roman wife could make or break her husband's career, not through overt actions, but through subtle guidance and careful management of their domestic and social spheres. Your role as a materfamilias wasn't confined to the four walls of your home. Public appearances and social gatherings were crucial arenas where you subtly, yet powerfully, upheld your family's honor and advanced its interests. These weren't opportunities for frivolous entertainment, but rather carefully navigated events where every gesture, every conversation, and every piece of attire was scrutinized. You were, in essence, a living embodiment of your husband's status and reputation. Imagine attending a grand banquet convivium at the home of a prominent senator. You would arrive with your husband, perhaps in a litter if your family was wealthy enough, adorned in the finest toga and stola, draped elegantly to signify your status as a married woman. The stola, a long, traditional dress, was worn over a tunic and marked you as a respectable matron. Your hair would be meticulously styled, perhaps with elaborate braids or even a simple bun held in place with delicate pins. The air would be thick with the scent of exotic spices from the food, the murmur of conversation, and the clinking of cups. You wouldn't recline at the dining table with the men. Roman women typically sat on chairs at banquets, a subtle but distinct social demarcation. Your primary duty at such events was to be a gracious hostess, even if you were a guest yourself. Reflecting well on your husband, you'd engage in polite conversation, often discussing household matters, family news, or even cultural topics like literature or philosophy. If you were educated, the goal was to demonstrate your intelligence and charm without being overly assertive or drawing too much attention to yourself. Gossiping was, of course, a common pastime, but you'd have to be discreet, knowing that any perceived impropriety could reflect poorly on your family. There's a certain sly humor in how much social maneuvering occurred under the veneer of dignified conversation. Beyond private banquets, you might also attend public events such as religious festivals or games in the amphitheater. These were grand spectacles, often filled with throngs of people, noise, and excitement. While men might engage in heated political discussions or gambling, you would likely be seated in a designated area, still under a watchful eye, even in these seemingly public and open spaces. The rules of decorum applied. You wouldn't cheer too loudly or draw undue attention. Your presence was largely symbolic, a confirmation of your family's participation in Roman civic and religious life. The Roman Forum was another crucial public space, though perhaps one you frequented less for pleasure and more for necessity or specific social calls. While men conducted most of their business and political dealings here, you might visit for shopping, to oversee family affairs, or to meet with other women. The Forum was a vibrant, chaotic hub of activity, filled with merchants, lawyers, politicians, and common citizens. Navigating its crowds required a certain poise and presence, especially for a woman of status. You would move with dignity, perhaps accompanied by a few slaves, carrying yourself with the confidence of someone secure in her social position. For a Roman woman, one of the most powerful forms of public appearance was simply being seen as a virtuous and respectable wife and mother. Your reputation, as mentioned before, was paramount. If you were seen fulfilling your domestic duties, attending religious rites, and presenting yourself modestly in public, you contributed significantly to your family's dignitas, prestige, and auctoritas authority. This unspoken performance was a constant aspect of your public life, a subtle but persistent pressure to maintain an impeccable image. It's interesting to consider how Roman women expressed their individual style within these rigid social codes. While there weren't fashion magazines in the modern sense, Roman women paid attention to their appearance. Hairdressing was a complex art, with elaborate coiffures often signifying wealth and social status. Jewelry was also a key indicator of prosperity, from simple fibulae brooches to elaborate necklaces and earrings made of gold, pearls, and precious stones. While conspicuous display was a marker of status, there was an underlying expectation of gravitas and modesty, ensuring that luxury didn't tip over into vulgarity. Think of it as a very sophisticated form of subtle branding for your family. One fascinating detail is the Roman triumph, a grand parade celebrating military victories. While these were primarily male-dominated affairs, the wives and families of the triumphant generals and emperors would often play a symbolic role, riding in carriages behind their husbands, further cementing their family's public image and prestige. This offered a rare opportunity for women to be seen by vast crowds, associating them directly with their husband's military glory. Historians still debate the extent to which Roman women genuinely enjoyed these social events versus seeing them as mere obligations. While the formal structure and constant scrutiny might seem stifling to us, Roman women were deeply ingrained in a society that valued social participation and the upholding of public image. For many, these gatherings were likely opportunities for meaningful connection, information exchange, and a chance to assert their subtle influence within their social circles. You were not just a wife, you were an ambassador for your family, always on display, always representing. While the ideal Roman marriage was one of lifelong fidelity and mutual respect, the realities of human nature, power dynamics, and societal norms meant that love, infidelity, and divorce were all part of the Roman experience, often with vastly different implications for men and women. For you, as a Roman woman, the landscape of emotional attachments and marital dissolution was fraught with complexities and potential dangers. Let's first consider the concept of love within marriage. As we've discussed, most Roman marriages were initially arranged for pragmatic reasons alliance. Wealth, lineage, however, over time, genuine affection and deep companionship often blossomed. Shared responsibilities, the raising of children, and navigating life's challenges together could forge powerful bonds. Inscriptions on tombstones frequently eulogize beloved wives with terms like most chaste, most obedient, skilled in woolworking, but also with heartfelt expressions of love and admiration, suggesting a profound emotional connection. Imagine the quiet satisfaction of a partnership built on respect and shared purpose, even if it didn't start with passionate romance. However, the Roman world was far from a monogamous ideal, especially for men. Infidelity, while technically condemned, was often tolerated for husbands, particularly if their affairs were with slaves, prostitutes, or women of lower social standing. For a man, such liaisons were generally not seen as a threat to the family line or the purity of his legitimate heirs. For you as the wife, this reality could be a source of profound emotional pain, humiliation, and a challenge to your dignity. You might have to endure your husband's indiscretions in silence, knowing that public complaint would be unseemly and could even destabilize your own position within the family. It was a subtle, yet deeply ingrained, double standard for a Roman woman. However, female infidelity was an entirely different matter. It was considered a grave offense, a serious crime against the family, threatening the legitimacy of heirs and potentially contaminating the family line. An adulterous wife could face severe penalties, including public shaming, exile, or even death. Particularly in earlier periods or under stricter moral codes like those imposed by Emperor Augustus. Imagine the terrifying weight of this expectation your every action, every interaction with men outside your immediate family. Under intense scrutiny, a single misstep could ruin your life and bring immense dishonor upon your entire family. The risk was incredibly high, creating a climate of constant vigilance and fear for many Roman wives. This stark contrast highlights the patriarchal nature of Roman society, where male privilege was deeply embedded in law and custom. While men could seek solace or pleasure outside their marriages with relative impunity, women were expected to maintain an unblemished reputation for chastity and fidelity. This unequal burden was a harsh reality for Roman women, limiting their emotional freedom and imposing immense pressure to conform. Now, let's turn to divortium. Unlike many other ancient societies, divorce was remarkably easy and common in Rome, particularly during the late Republic and Empire. It wasn't a complex legal process requiring extensive grounds or court proceedings. Either husband or wife could initiate a divorce simply by stating their intention to do so. Often in front of witnesses, imagine the emotional whiplash of a marriage that could end so abruptly, often without much formal recourse for the spurned party. This relative ease of divorce, however, also meant that women, especially those from wealthy families who retained legal ties to their paterfamilias through sin manu marriages, had a degree of agency. A woman could, in theory, divorce her husband if she desired, though societal pressure and the need to protect her reputation often made this a difficult choice. The reasons for divorce were varied. A husband might divorce his wife for barrenness, for producing only daughters, for bad behavior, or simply for personal incompatibility. A wife might seek divorce due to her husband's cruelty, excessive infidelity, or if a more advantageous match presented itself. Particularly for her family, the return of the dowry was a crucial element in divorce proceedings. If the wife was divorced without fault on her part, her dowry was generally returned to her family, providing her with financial support. However, if she was found guilty of infidelity or other misbehavior, her dowry could be withheld, which further deterred women from transgressing societal norms. One interesting and often overlooked detail is that despite the prevalence of divorce, Roman society still held up the ideal of the univira, a woman who married only once. This ideal was often praised in epitaphs and literature, suggesting that even with the ease of divorce, a lifelong, faithful marriage was still the ultimate aspiration for many. It was a cultural value that often stood in tension with the practical realities of Roman marital practices. Historians still debate the emotional toll of frequent divorces on Roman society and individuals. While the legal process was simple, the personal consequences were profound. Children might be caught in the middle, and individuals could experience significant emotional distress, especially if a divorce was initiated against their will. The ability to remarry quickly, however, also meant that life could continue, and new alliances could be forged. Reflecting a society that valued continuity and practical solutions over enduring romantic ideals, you might find yourself navigating multiple marriages throughout your life, each bringing new challenges and new opportunities. After navigating the complexities of courtship, marriage, and domestic life. Your ultimate contribution as a Roman woman, and arguably your most cherished role, lay in motherhood and the continuation of your family's legacy. For a Roman wife, particularly in the earlier periods of the Republic and Empire, the ability to bear children, especially sons, was not merely a personal desire but a profound civic and familial duty. Your worth, in many respects, was cemented by the successful production of legitimate heirs. Imagine the immense joy, and perhaps also the immense relief, that would accompany the birth of a son. The male child was the one who would carry on the nomen family name, inherit the family property, and participate in public life, ensuring the family's political and social standing for generations to come. Daughters were certainly welcomed and loved, but their primary purpose was to be married off to form new alliances and produce children for other families. The pressure to produce male offspring was pervasive, a constant undercurrent in your married life. If you struggled with conception, or repeatedly bore only daughters, it could become a source of significant anxiety, potentially leading to a divorce initiated by your husband. Though this became less common over time, childbirth in ancient Rome was incredibly dangerous, both for you and for the infant, without modern medical knowledge or sterile environments. Complications were frequent, and infant mortality rates were tragically high. Many Roman women died in childbirth, making each successful delivery a testament to resilience and good fortune. You would be attended by midwives and female relatives, relying on traditional remedies and superstitious practices to ensure a safe delivery. The experience was undoubtedly agonizing and terrifying, yet also deeply profound. Once a child was born, particularly a boy, a ritual called the Dies Lustricus Day of Purification would occur on the 8th day after a girl's birth, and the 9th day after a boy's. During this ceremony, the child would be given their praenomen first name and officially acknowledged by the paterfamilias. This public acceptance was crucial. It signaled that the child was legitimate and formally accepted into the family. Imagine the solemnity of this moment, where your tiny infant's future was formally recognized, their place in the lineage secured. Your primary duty as a mother involved overseeing the upbringing and early education of your children, especially during their formative years. While wealthy families often employed tutors or pedagogues, often Greek slaves or freedmen for their sons, you, as the mater familias, were still responsible for instilling moral values, discipline, and a strong sense of Roman identity. You taught them about their ancestors, about the virtues of pietas duty to gods, family, and state gravitas, seriousness, and frugalitas frugality. Think of yourself as the first teacher, the moral compass, guiding your children through the foundational years of their lives. For girls, your role in their education was even more direct. You would teach them the domestic skills necessary to become successful wives and mothers themselves, spinning, weaving, managing a household, and the intricacies of social etiquette. You were their direct role model, demonstrating what it meant to be a virtuous and capable Roman matron. This generational transfer of knowledge was crucial for maintaining the social order and ensuring that Roman traditions continued. A particularly poignant detail is the concept of filial piety, pietas. This was a central Roman virtue, emphasizing profound respect and loyalty from children towards their parents, while often associated with sons honoring their fathers. Daughters were also expected to demonstrate pietas towards both parents, especially their mothers, by upholding the family's honor and making good marriages. This reciprocal relationship, where parents nurtured and guided, and children honored and respected, formed the bedrock of Roman family life. The display of children was also a significant part of a Roman woman's public image. Being seen with well-behaved, healthy children, particularly sons, enhanced your status and your husband's. The children were living proof of the success of your marriage and the vitality of your family line. While we might find the idea of children as status symbols a bit cold, For Romans, it was a practical and deeply ingrained aspect of social validation. Imagine the pride you would feel escorting your children to a public event, knowing they were a testament to your success as a mother. Historians still debate the degree of emotional attachment Roman parents had to their children, given the high infant mortality rates. While it might seem that a certain detachment was necessary for survival, numerous letters, epitaphs, and artistic depictions clearly show profound grief over lost children and deep affection for those who survived. Roman mothers, despite the societal pressures and dangers, undoubtedly loved their children deeply, nurturing them and investing in their future, often with an intensity born of the precariousness of life itself. You were not just a vessel for reproduction, you were a mother, with all the joys and heartaches that universal role entails. As you move through the Roman world, you begin to understand that, even as a wife and mother, your life isn't entirely static or devoid of personal growth, even if that growth is constrained by societal norms. The Roman woman, particularly during the later Republic and Empire, found subtle ways to exert influence, pursue interests, and shape her own destiny within the existing framework. This wasn't a sudden revolution, but a slow, gradual evolution of women's roles. Consider the increasing prevalence of free marriage sine manu over time. As we discussed, in a sine manu marriage, you remained legally under your father's authority, rather than passing into your husband's manus. This seemingly minor legal distinction had profound implications for your autonomy. It meant that you retained control over your own property and dowry. And if your father died, you might even become sui juris, legally independent. A fascinating and somewhat surprising concept in a patriarchal society. This legal independence, while not granting you political rights, certainly gave you more financial leverage and a greater say in your own affairs than earlier generations of Roman women. Imagine the quiet power that came with managing your own inheritance or making decisions about your personal wealth. Even if those decisions were often made in consultation with male family members, this growing financial independence sometimes allowed Roman women to engage in business ventures. While certainly not the norm, some wealthy women owned and managed properties, invested in trade, or even ran small businesses. Think of a woman overseeing her family's pottery workshops, managing their agricultural estates, or investing in merchant ships. These activities were often conducted through male agents or family members, but the ultimate control and financial benefit lay with the woman. This wasn't about breaking free from traditional gender roles, but about operating skillfully within them, leveraging wealth and influence to secure your family's economic stability and enhance your own standing. Your participation in religious life was also a significant aspect of your existence, offering both a sense of community and a path to honor. Roman women played crucial roles in various cults and festivals. You might participate in public rituals to honor goddesses like Ceres, goddess of agriculture, or Venus, goddess of love and beauty, or engage in private household worship of the Lares and Penates. Some women even served as priestesses, such as the Vestal Virgins. Though this was a very specific and highly venerated, but equally restrictive path. For most women, religious practice was an integral part of daily life, offering spiritual solace, social connection, and a structured way to contribute to the well-being of the family and the state. Imagine the sensory richness of these rituals, the scent of incense, the chanting, the vibrant decorations, all creating a powerful atmosphere of communal devotion. Beyond formal religion, Roman women often consulted oracles, seers, and astrologers. In a world without scientific explanations for many natural phenomena, people sought guidance and reassurance from the supernatural. You might secretly visit a fortune teller to inquire about your husband's health, your children's future, or your own fate. While frowned upon by some philosophers and moralists, this was a common practice, reflecting a deep-seated human need to understand and influence the unpredictable forces of life. It offers a glimpse into the more personal, sometimes clandestine, spiritual lives of Roman women. The concept of friendship and sisterhood among Roman women is another fascinating aspect. While marriage and family were central, strong bonds often formed between female relatives and close friends. These relationships provided emotional support, shared advice, and a sense of solidarity in a society that often placed immense burdens on women. Imagine gathering with your female friends, sharing confidences, discussing household challenges, or simply enjoying each other's company away from the formal gaze of men. These were crucial spaces for emotional release and mutual encouragement, offering a private refuge within a highly public existence. One particularly surprising detail is the existence of female gladiators, gladiatrices. While incredibly rare and often viewed as sensational curiosities, there are historical accounts and archaeological evidence, such as the Amazon and Achilea relief, suggesting that some women did indeed fight in the arena. This challenges the stereotype of all Roman women being confined to domestic roles and reveals a fascinating, albeit peripheral, subculture of women who defied conventional expectations, while you, as a respectable matron, would never consider such a path. The very existence of gladiatrices speaks to the diverse, sometimes contradictory, realities of Roman womanhood. It's a reminder that human behavior often pushes against the boundaries of societal norms. Historians still debate the true level of education and literacy among Roman women across different social classes. While formal schooling was primarily for boys, many girls from wealthy families received private tutoring at home, learning Latin and Greek, history, and rhetoric. Some achieved remarkable levels of scholarship, contributing to intellectual life in their own right, even if their works were less likely to be preserved or publicly acknowledged. This suggests a more nuanced picture than simply uneducated versus educated, with a spectrum of literacy and intellectual engagement that varied significantly depending on a woman's family background and personal inclinations. As the sun sets on your journey through the life of an ancient Roman woman, we come to the twilight years, a period that, for many, brought a degree of respect, authority, and even a unique form of freedom that was largely absent in your younger days. This wasn't a time for quiet retirement as we know it, but rather a phase of life where the accumulated wisdom and experience of a Roman matron could truly shine. If you had successfully navigated marriage, raised a family, and maintained your household with dignity, you would often be seen as the matron of the family, a revered figure whose counsel was sought and whose opinions carried weight. Your sons, now grown men with their own careers and families, would typically show you immense respect, a testament to the Roman virtue of pietas. Your daughters and daughters-in-law would look to you for guidance on managing their own households. Raising children and navigating the intricate social landscape of Rome. Imagine the satisfaction of being the wise elder, the matriarch whose experience helped steer the course of an entire family. This respect often translated into a subtle, yet powerful, form of influence. While you still couldn't hold public office or vote, your influence over your husband, your sons, and even your sons-in-law could be considerable. You might advise them on political matters, financial investments, or family alliances. Your opinion, particularly if you had a reputation for shrewdness and good judgment, could sway important decisions. This wasn't overt power, but a quiet, behind-the-scenes authority born from a lifetime of careful observation and strategic thinking. Think of it as the ultimate form of soft power, wielded with grace and experience. For widows, the situation could be even more complex, offering both challenges and surprising opportunities. A wealthy widow, especially one who remained sui juris legally independent and retained control over her dowry and inheritance, could wield significant financial power. She might choose to remarry, often for practical reasons, or she might opt to remain unmarried, enjoying an unprecedented degree of autonomy. Imagine a wealthy widow managing her vast estates, making independent financial decisions, and even sponsoring public works or religious festivals. This level of independence was a remarkable contrast to the lives of younger, unmarried women who were always under male guardianship. However, this freedom came with its own set of challenges, including the pressure to maintain one's reputation and manage property effectively without a male protector. Your involvement in your grandchildren's lives would also be a source of great joy and purpose. You would likely play a significant role in their early upbringing, imparting moral lessons, telling stories of your family's ancestors, and teaching them traditional Roman values. The bond between Roman grandmothers and their grandchildren was often very strong, a cherished relationship that transcended the more formal dynamics of parent-child interactions. This was a chance to nurture the next generation, to pass on your legacy, and to see your family's future unfold before your eyes. One of the beautiful and often overlooked aspects of Roman old age was the opportunity for leisure and contemplation. While you would never truly retire from your role as the family matriarch, the physical demands of household management might lessen, allowing you more time for personal pursuits. You might spend your days in quiet contemplation, reading scrolls, engaging in intellectual discussions with friends, or simply enjoying the serenity of your garden. This wasn't a universal experience, of course, but for those with wealth and good health, it offered a period of reflection and intellectual engagement, a fascinating, yet often debated. Detail is the extent to which older Roman women might have influenced religious cults and practices. While much of public religion was male-dominated, women often played a crucial role in household worship and some specific female cults. As an older woman, your experience and piety would lend you considerable authority in these spheres. Perhaps even as a leader or respected elder in certain religious rites, your long life would be seen as a sign of divine favor, further enhancing your spiritual standing within the community. Historians still debate whether the increased freedom and influence of Roman women in later periods was a deliberate social shift or merely a consequence of evolving legal practices, particularly the prevalence of sine manu marriages and greater opportunities for female property ownership, regardless of the underlying cause. The reality for many Roman women was a trajectory that moved from strict societal control in youth to a dignified and influential old age, where their wisdom and experience were truly valued. You endured the early constraints, fulfilling your duties, and in doing so, earned the profound respect that defined your twilight years. And now, as the last echoes of ancient Rome fade into the soft hum of your surroundings, let the stories of these remarkable women gently lull you into a peaceful slumber. Their lives, so different from our own, yet bound by universal threads of family, duty, and resilience, have passed into the annals of history. Remember the quiet strength of the Mater Familias, the vibrant hues of the Flammium, and the enduring power of a legacy that transcended centuries? Drift off now, and may your dreams be filled with ancient whispers and forgotten tales,